Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the EFL Magazine podcast. Today's guest is Ryan Hagglund. Ryan is originally from Washington State, USA, and has been in Japan since 1998. In 2007, he became president and CEO of My English School in Higashine, where he also teaches. Additionally, he's an adjunct professor at Yamagata University and a coordinator of ETJ, English Teachers in Japan, Sendai. I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Hey everyone, buckle up for a new episode of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast, the one and only podcast made to help you launch your business or take your existing business to a level of success you could never have imagined. Whether you're a school owner, freelancer, publisher, or other entrepreneur, you're sure to pick up lots of actionable advice when you listen to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. Remember to visit eflmagazine.com for great articles and features. Without further ado, here's your host, the founder of EFL Magazine, Philip Pound.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the EFL Magazine podcast. And I'm with Ryan Hagglund today from My English School in Yamagata, Japan. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Philip.
And how are things today in Yamagata?
Well, it's nice and sunny, but recovering from the flooding we had over the weekend.
Yeah. By the number of natural disasters you can encounter in Japan.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We had 3 of our locations had to cancel classes. One teacher couldn't get home for 2 days, and one location we were having to replace all the carpet and everything until and using a separate location until we can get back into this one. So, but beyond that, things are going pretty well.
So tell me a little bit more about Yamagata. You're in Tohoku. So tell me about Tohoku.
Tohoku is a wonderful, wonderful place, but very rural, especially by Japanese standards. So one way to imagine is Osaka Prefecture has about 8 million people. Tohoku, all 6 prefectures, all 6 of them much, much bigger than Osaka in land area, has 9 million people. So it's a very rural, trains, once an hour on the main line, sometimes once every 2 hours in the middle of the day. Almost everyone drives. But there's so much wonderful food, the fruit, the Japanese sake. There's so many wonderful things here, but it's definitely not the city culture people in Tokyo or Osaka would be used to.
So when we hear of Tohoku in Japan, of course, one thing unfortunately comes to mind, and that was the earthquake. So
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience of living through that?
Oh yeah, that was, it's been 13 years now, but it doesn't feel like it. We had owned the school, would have been 3 years after we had taken over. And I was actually in a demo lesson for Mama and Me, a baby class at the time. And it started shaking. And then it felt like it would have just about to let up. And then the shaking got worse. And I don't know how long it was, but it was by far the longest and biggest earthquake I've ever felt. Power went out. Of course, we finished the lesson immediately after we were able to stand up, because we all got down on the floor. And the shaking, I'd say for the next 2 or 3 days, it was fairly constant aftershocks. And the strange part was we were out of power for about 27 hours. So even though we're only 50 kilometers from the coast, we have to go over the mountains. We knew nothing about the tsunami. So the world is watching that tsunami in real time, and we knew nothing about it until the next day. And finally power comes on, able to check on the internet. And it's like, what? Wow. Just wow. And for us, we were fine. No none of our schools were damaged outside of like books flying different places. We were able to start lessons up, I think, the next Tuesday, and it was a Friday earthquake. And a lot of our students, and that got us a very good reputation. We're very happy that we got going because most places weren't going again that quickly, and they wanted a diversion. They wanted something to do. But it was hard to get teachers around because everyone drives, but we couldn't get gas. I waited overnight to get 12 liters of gas in the next week after the earthquake. But compared to the loss of life over on the tsunami side, we didn't, we had several students who lost family members in the tsunami, but we ourselves, weren't hurt that badly. So
yeah, it's still a raw experience for a lot of people I know in Tohoku, and for Japan in general, isn't it, to talk about it?
Yeah. And we had a lot of people who came over, like my children's elementary school brought in a lot of students from Sendai, Fukushima, that came over because of the disaster. And then, of course, the fear of the nuclear meltdown. That this is where I'm getting into personal beliefs, but my feeling was the fear was far, far greater than the actual danger, is what we found out later. But the fear that caused we didn't have any teachers leave, but I know a lot of other schools in the area suddenly lost several of their teachers because they were afraid. And so, but no, it's definitely an experience I would prefer not to have again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, starting the school, you started at another interesting time, 2008, wasn't it? As they call it here, Lehman shock, or yeah, and you took over a school at that time. So, what led you to starting your own school? Had you a background in business before? Were you at a crossroads to say, how am I going to go forward in my career? Did it just pop up, or was it kind of a gradual process? It was something you were talking about for a long time?
Kind of all of the above.
Okay.
It was a gradual process in that I had come on the JET program and done 3 years, decided that I enjoyed teaching. I wanted to stay in Japan longer. But if I was going to teach, I wanted to be a professional. So I got my first master's online through University of Birmingham. And then I, after the JET program, taught a private high school for 5 years. And at that private high school, I got a lot. I was no longer an ALT. I was a contract teacher. I taught on my own. They should have had me as a sub homeroom teacher. Fukutanin is what they call it here. And so I got a lot of experience in how the schools work and what's going on there, but also realized through my studies, I want to teach the way I would like to teach. And there were still too many restrictions, even though I was teaching on my own. And so through that, I went back to America for 1.5 years. I kept my residency here in Japan. I kept my visa and everything, but went back to Oregon, where I'm originally from, and did a Master's of Arts in teaching certification there, with the idea of trying to keep my roads open as much as I could. So I thought maybe I teach at international school, but there's only one at that time, there's only one international school in Tohoku. It's in Sendai. Or maybe I start my own school. But I wasn't sure where to do that. And I didn't have any business background. I did a business minor in university, but nothing, no actual business management experience. And while I was in the US about to finish up that second master's degree, a school owner in the same town where I had built my house while teaching at the high school called me and said that he and his wife were looking to leave Japan, and he was wondering if I'd take over. So hence the buildup and before that, I should add that I had spent 4 or 5 years as a member of the Yahoo groups. They used to have Yahoo groups for ETJ school owners. So I spent 4 or 5 years communicating with school owners about running their schools to figure out what I would do if I chose that route. So it was both long-term preparation, getting the degrees, getting the learning, talking with school owners. I also talked with the international school about what it would take to teach there. And then it was sudden in the sense that the communication from the owner of my English school at that time contacted me and said, "Hey, Ryan, are you interested?" And then that was quick, within 4 months, or within 6 months. My wife and I were the owners of an English school.
It's easy as that. So, Yahoo groups. That's kind of nostalgic feeling there.
Oh yeah, yeah. You get the email every day.
Yeah, I know. There's Yahoo groups. Well, I can't even remember. And I remember chat rooms. Do chat rooms still exist? Are they still a thing?
Well, that's a chat room. I mean, I guess. Would the comment section on a blog be kind of like the modern version of a chat room?
Maybe, yeah.
Or is Facebook, because everything's moved to Facebook now for school owners.
Yeah.
There's several Facebook groups, and the Yahoo ones all died out when Facebook took over, although I preferred the Yahoo ones in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, so you did your research on the Yahoo groups of what to do and what not to do. Right. So what kind of advice did you pick up on? What actually worked and what didn't?
Well, let's see. What I think I came in from the education standpoint. And so I came in knowing that I wanted to completely revamp the curriculum. The previous owner had been a great business person setting it up, but hadn't really set up a curriculum. So he had gotten the school up to about 100 students, one location, and he was big, had a lot of corporate contracts, which goes into taking over the school right at the Lehman shock. But what worked really well is using my skills as a education professional and leaning into that. I started teaching at Yamagata University, and so it's the only national university in Yamagata, so I could advertise this school is run by a professor at a teacher at Yamagata University, and really focusing on playing up the quality. So we stopped taking students year round. We would only take students April until the end of June if they're elementary school, and after that we'd say, sorry, you can't join anymore. The students have progressed too much for new students to come in without experience. Please wait until April. And some things like that really, I think, helped build up the school's reputation so that we were able to grow into what is now really the largest school of our style. There's some other, like franchise schools or like Pepe kind of things. But as far as, this style of Eikaiwa school, the largest in Yamagata Prefecture by number of students. But where I didn't get enough information was on the costs of running it. I very, very underestimated how much it would cost. And the first, especially 4 or 5 years, my wife and I were pulling far less in income than our teachers were making. Combine our two salaries together, we were making more than a teacher. But considering how much we were working and that we were both working, those first 4 or 5 years, you'd been much better off being a teacher at our school financially. And it just takes a lot of time and work, especially having purchased the school like that. And I underestimated that very much.
Okay, you underestimated the cost. You underestimated the amount of work it would take. A lot of people say
that as well. Oh, the amount of work and the cost. Yeah, the amount of work and the cost. So I thought I would be coming out with much more salary in the first couple of years than I did. And I would get calls from my wife. The kids are wondering when you're going to be home. Where's dad? And, I would be, working most days easily 10 to 10, if not longer. And pulling things together at the university, regularly working 7 days a week. So it's a lot of work, but it's worked out quite well, at least for us in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you're in the right country for a lot of work, aren't you?
That is true. That is true. And some of that work was definitely, we'll say, business meetings in the evening that included some alcohol. So, those are enjoyable. I enjoy the socialization aspect of it very much.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good part. Actually, it just reminds me of I was on the plane a couple of months back, maybe about a month ago, and I don't know if you've seen the Amazon movie. I can't remember the one about Jeff Bezos and he working 12, 14, 15
Okay, I
hours
haven't seen
on
it,
his
but I've heard
business.
about it.
But
Yeah.
it's something similar like that, and the cracks appearing in his marriage because of the long hours. So speaking of long hours and working with your wife at long hours, I mean, how was that? Sometimes, couples, everything is fine, but they shouldn't do certain things together. Like some couples say, don't play sport together or don't work together. I mean, was it okay? Were you able to get along? And
Oh, we got along just because we both have personalities that I think allow for the faults of the other person. But we definitely, there were definitely difficult times. What was important for us is she does not like the administration side of running things. And I think a lot of school owners, one spouse, the Japanese spouse will be the administrative side of the school, contacting parents, emailing and doing all of that stuff, while the English speaker, the non-Japanese side, would do the teaching. And from the beginning, taking over a school for us that already had 100 students, some contracts. So what was helpful, so we already had some teachers there and an office person. But having that office person for us was very important because my wife doesn't want to do that. She wants to teach. And so I would say knowing what she wants to do and knowing what I wanted to do, so that she was not just doing things because, well, it has to be done. So that she could teach and, communicate with some parents, but leave the mundane stuff to an office person. And then when we did open up the kindergarten, she became the head of the English kindergarten. And there she absolutely loves what she's doing now. So I think that was very important. I see a lot of couples where one starts to resent having to run the school. And I think that creates problems when that happens. So, for us, that I'm trying to think, not so the difficult times, we were just both in it together. So
yeah, it was shared burden in that way. So it was
a shared
brought
burden.
you together.
Exactly. Right.
So tell me, so you said you underestimated the cost, the amount of work it would take. So for somebody who's looking to venture forth and start a school in Japan, what kind of costs can you be talking about? We don't need like numbers of costs, but we can say, what costs money and what takes up your time.
Yeah, I think that there's two different situations, because we purchased a school, and so already went in, so I wasn't having to start from the very beginning. And because of that, and where we had some difficulty was that we had to finance the purchase price of the school, and so making sure we could live our own lives and keep the school running and pay off the financing we had taken out to purchase was very stressful. For someone who would be starting from the very beginning, they would be in a quite different situation. And that one, talking to people in that situation, I would, I don't know. Are you familiar with Adam Grant at all?
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a professor at the Wharton School of Business. And he writes about a time when he gave up. He decided not to invest in Warby Parker, which was started by some of his students. And he decided not to invest because these students who were starting it weren't going to give up their day jobs right away. And he thought, oh, if you're not going to give up your day job, you must not really be committed. And he didn't want to invest. And we all know that an investment in Warby Parker would have been very good now. But he did some research after that when Warby Parker did really well. And what he discovered is that people who keep their day jobs while they start whatever their new project is are more likely to succeed. And the theory behind that is you get more of a runway. You're not as worried about money while you get it going. So if you're starting your own school from scratch, my recommendation would be don't quit your day job, and not in the pejorative sense, but in the keep your day job going until you know that school is going to be strong enough that you can lose your day job income. And the second one would be, remember too, that if you decide to hire additional teachers, remember that for quite a while, you are going to be making less than your teachers do. The moment you hire teachers, your personal disposable income goes way down. So you need to decide if you want to take that step, because you need to grow beyond that to make it worthwhile, or stay small. And in our case, I would say be careful in taking out too much debt. For us, it worked. I'm glad we did it. We wouldn't be where we are now if we hadn't. But we very easily could have messed up, lost a whole bunch of students in the transition, and then would have had debt payments I had to make, plus salaries to 2 teachers, plus the office person, and my own house payment and family to feed. So being careful that if you are taking over a school, making sure you leave enough leeway in there so that you're not putting yourself in a difficult situation, because I was definitely running in a hamster wheel for quite a while.
Okay, good advice. And yeah, it's the financial worries weigh heavy, don't they, on people's minds. I mean, I think I read in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books about the Indian farmers that get the subsidy payments once a year, and they measure their abilities on certain tests. And when they've just gotten the payment, they're able to perform much better than months before, when the money is dwindling. So it weighs heavy, and it also relationships as well can become frayed, can't they?
And it becomes hard to make good decisions in the moment because you don't have the bandwidth to take in all of the different factors you need to be looking at, and that can be costly. So I can look back, on some decisions that I've made in the moment that maybe I would have made differently had I not been under so much stress.
Yeah, certainly. So you start off 2008, you took a school over 100 students, and now, as of 2024, you're up to 9 schools and 1,200 students. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, plus Yamagata's only immersion kindergarten. So so we've done in from what at that time would have been 3 employees, and I think we're up to 46 now. So some pretty decent growth, though, especially in the first, up until COVID, especially, the growth was quite quick.
Okay. And I want to dig into that a little bit. So it's kind of like the flywheel. It's hard to get it moving at the start, but once you get it going, the momentum just takes you there. Is that it? Was that your experience? The 5 years were the toughest, and then
exactly. I think that's what a lot of it is. And the question is whether or not the flywheel actually gets spinning or not. Because for a lot it doesn't. For a lot of people it doesn't. And why it did for us is, a lot of it is luck too, I think. But yeah, once it gets going, and people, especially if you get the right people in the right positions that can start doing what you want, what is best for the school, then you get that starts getting that flywheel going. So things just start happening, even though I am not personally involved in all of it.
So tell me about that. So you're the first 5 years, things are tight, things are tough. It's you don't, as you admitted yourself, you didn't have the bandwidth under a lot of stress. There's the fear of failure, isn't there? And there's sometimes feel it's going to happen that way. And then, of course, so it becomes like a vicious cycle, doesn't it? You begin to negatively think about your business. It's almost putting a hex on everything that you do. Everything goes into downspin. But then there's the virtuous cycle as well, isn't there? That things go well,
Right.
everything seems to go your way, and just opportunities pop up, and things just accumulate. So was that an experience for you that you had to deal with the negative mindset and the positive mindset, or were you one of these rare people who could always think optimistically and always knew you were going to succeed?
I did not always know I was going to succeed. I assumed I was going to succeed, which I think is a subtle difference, I think, but I didn't always know if I would. I tend to be relatively optimistic while trying, but also part of that optimism is just shoving my anxieties and worries down, which isn't always healthy. But with the school, everything was moving so quickly, then we were growing so quickly, but it was just really hard to keep up with the knowledge that I needed to keep up with that, especially in working with people, working with the Japanese legal system and regulations, trying to keep up with business contracts, because we all know that Japanese businesses have very particular ways they want to work with things. And then we also took over some schools because we were growing so quickly. I think we actually, I'd say, got a little arrogant in there at a couple points where we took over a school in the Sakata area, Yamagata, which is now doing quite well, but took a while to get going. We took over a school in Hyogo, in the Kansai area of Japan, which has taken a lot longer to get going than we thought. So we made the assumption, I know other school owners have done this, that we are doing really well where we are. Let's just expand and grow, and we will do just as well in every other area. And that is where some of the decisions I made were affected by that stress that I was feeling, just not having time to fall back, where I was, because sometimes growing too fast causes the stress as well, rather than, and I don't know if I wish we had grown more slowly because I like where we are now, but I think if we had grown a lot more quickly, especially with the level of experience that I had and not really having, I knew a lot of school owners, but not a lot of business people to get mentorship from. It's very hard to get mentorship in Japan. It's getting easier now, but generally speaking, Japan has been hard to get mentorship because most people get their mentorship from their company that they join. And so I went to the bank at one point saying, because we have a very good relationship with our bank, and like, do you know anyone who can mentor me? And the bank's like, well, we've never really had anyone ask us that before. Let's get, and so that made things, that was almost the level of success and growth made things more difficult and stressful.
So the growing pains, and you mentioned a little bit that overconfidence.
Yes. That kind of ties into what you had just said, what you had asked earlier is, am I more the confident type or not? And maybe that's, the overconfidence in there. So I don't know if it was quite arrogance or not, but hey, it's going really well. It's going to go really well forever, kind of thing.
Well, it's not a character flaw. It's an environmental thing, isn't it? It's a life experience. I mean, situations can bring out this, can't they? I mean, they can, success goes to people's heads, doesn't it? Sometimes, and Yeah, we feel we can do more than we can. But you've done quite well. I mean, how did you think about expanding? Because, we know of stories here in Japan of like schools that have expanded too quickly and then like Icarus, have fallen back to the sea again. So what made you think that you wanted more schools rather than, like, say, a work-life balance? So some people say, okay, I have one school, maybe two schools. Okay, actually, I prefer to, like, I think Ian Simpson, as he told me himself, he's got a few schools, but he can do his surfing and he's got a nice work-life balance. He doesn't want to take on heavier workload. But you did.
This is one thing as an educator, I truly believe in how we teach. I've learned a whole lot from, say, David Paul, ETJ, and so forth about constructivist language teaching. And I really saw in the market, especially in Yamagata, that there weren't that many places doing that. And even in all of Japan, there aren't that many places doing it relatively. And the number is increasing. And so part of me was like really wanting the level of English to improve. And part of that was by getting more students and increasing the number of schools would allow that to happen. A lot of it too is just through personal connections. Opportunities would pop up and I would tend to grab onto them. So we had a contract. Our first school that we opened, we had a contract with an offsite kindergarten, or our preschool, actually, a childcare center, that they would take our teacher and the teacher would teach on Saturdays. But they decided to start doing childcare on Saturdays and they couldn't do their program with our teacher anymore. But we already had students who had been with us for several years because that program had been from the previous owner. And so we opened our second school in the town next door so we wouldn't lose those students. But of course, that took on a whole lot of other costs in the process. And then the third school we opened, so that would have been, we took over 2008. So that would have been 2010 when we opened the second school. And also the number of students, so we'd gone from 100, I think by 2010, we were from about 100 to about 140. These are numbers are off the top of my head at the moment, but about 140 at that main school. So we were already seeing good growth there. And so that opportunity, and then another school owner in another area of Yamagata who kind of had the same educational philosophy we did, decided to go back to Canada. And he's like, Ryan, I've got these students. I'm going to be leaving. Do you want them? So I was like, oh, sure, we'll do that. And so we took over and started our next school about an hour and a half away where he was. And then there's a church in Yamagata City that used to, they would bring missionaries over to teach English, but they were having trouble keeping them. And so they wanted the English classes. They wanted to have English classes in their church, but they wanted to have an actual English teacher do them. We were like, okay, well, I am personally Christian, but I was like, the business is a business. We're not an evangelical. I can't guarantee, a Christian. I can only guarantee that we'll have lessons in the church. And yeah, you can hand out flyers if you want to for the church events. And then we got asked by that church, another church, and then another kindergarten. And then when the students grew and we got too many to be using the churches anymore, amicably, we said we can't really do it. And then we moved all those students into Yamagata school. So it wasn't we wanted to grow and we saw the growth, but it wasn't a choice of, hey, we're going to open this school. We didn't have a 5-year plan. And had we had a plan, would have gone better, possibly. Maybe I would have had more a work-life balance. Maybe that's just not possible to, at this stage in a business. But it just kind of happened, and we took those opportunities. Another one, opening the kindergarten. This would have been we opened the kindergarten in 2014. And what happened there is so it was only 6 years into the school at this point, probably about, I'm going to guess about 400 students at that time, maybe, between our schools. And we had the little school that we had opened in Yamagata, where we had combined 2 years before, combined the church schools into one. And we had been thinking, yeah, we want to do a kindergarten, but we couldn't find a place to do it. And suddenly the location, both to the right and to the left of our school, came open. And we talked to the landlord, we're like, yeah, we can punch holes through, make walkways, and bam, we opened up. They came open in September. We decided to start renting them, and we opened our kindergarten the next April. So there was no 5-year plan that would have taken that into consideration. We just, when opportunities came up, we jumped on them and then made them work.
Hey.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned already about the growing pains and the difficulty of scaling the business. And now you run independentowners.jp. Tell me about that organization.
Yeah. Okay. On that one, this would have originally in 2014. Well, I've always been a member of JALT, Japan Association of Language Teaching, and wanted within there to meet other school owners outside of ETJ. And around 2014, through that, I became the president of the School Owners SIG within JALT. And putting a lot of work into that with other school owners, but realizing in that time, I have been the president for most of that time until now, and realizing there's some areas that are just not a good fit. So but school owners need, well, we're in Japan. We don't necessarily have a good grasp of the language. We don't necessarily all the time. Even when we do, we don't have contacts like attorneys, employment attorneys. It was a long time before we were able to do those things for my school. Knowing about contracts, just knowing how to run a school. Most of us are teachers first and then business owners later. Not all of us. And so wanting to take what we were doing at the School Owners SIG, but make it independent so that as school owners, we can learn from each other. And for me also, the school would not be as successful as it is now, but for what I learned from other school owners, like through ETJ and so forth, and wanting to pay that back so that other school owners could grow. And so starting the independent owners.jp, the full is independent owners and teachers. You don't just have to be a school owner, but if you're someone who's teaching independently, essentially anyone who is getting paid themselves and having to do marketing themselves and so forth in order to get their students and teach their students, and wanting to help such people grow, and in the process increase the quality of English language teaching in Japan. So we had our first conference. As a JALT School Owners SIG, we had 3 conferences, but as the independent owners, we had our first conference this last July 7th. And a little over 40 school owners got together, and we had presentations and all kinds of discussions. And we're going to be planning more in the future in Tokyo, Osaka, and hopefully back in Nagoya as well.
Okay, and tell me some of the takeaways from the recent conference.
Let's see. We had 7 main speakers, but for one of the speakers came from the out. She's not an actual school owner, but she's a Instagram consultant. So talking about how good ways of using Instagram, what are the different types of Instagram posts, good ways to do that. I did a presentation on starting up systems so that your school isn't reinventing the wheel all the time. You're keeping track of what you're doing so that your systems help your school to be more efficient, and also so that when you have new employees come in, they are keeping things going based on what previous employees were doing. Who David Paul talked about his experience, and he got his David English House up to how many thousands of students? I can't remember how many thousands of students it was in Hiroshima, and also schools, franchise schools in I believe in Thailand and Korea. We they're just, and there were other school owners there at the meeting times talking about how to deal with complaints from parents and other customers. I prefer to call them students. A lot of school owners call them customers, but how do you deal with those complaints, and how do you balance that so that you maintain your company standards while also trying to make the students as happy as possible? That's barely touching the tip of the iceberg of what we were talking about and learning during that day.
Okay, fascinating. There's going to be a link in the show notes as well to the mini conference and the organization itself. So you're planning events in the future. How can people get involved?
For right now, the best way to get involved would be to contact me. I guess maybe I can either give my personal email, or we also have one that there's also independent owners at myego.com would be one, or my personal email would be rhagglund, RHAGGLUND at myego.com. Myego is MY and then ego, EIGO.com.
No problem. I can put it in the notes anyway. That's not a problem. People can contact you there. So that's a really great resource for school owners in Japan, and something you wish you'd had when you were starting out.
Right, because you had the Yahoo groups and stuff, and the ETJ Expos would have, say, a 45-minute owners forum, but there were not day-long seminars or conferences for school owners, and that would have been extremely helpful for me.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have that in the show notes. So outside of teaching, you mentioned a little bit before the podcast about the Lions Club and your participation in Lions Club in Japan, and you said that Lions Club in Japan is very Japanese. So that whetted my appetite to find out more.
Oh yeah, because you think Lions Club is actually a fairly large organization in Japan, both Lions and Rotary. And you would think, they're American organizations, so they must be very American. But I joined, I think about 12 years ago. But it is I'd say Lions prides itself on being egalitarian, and they are, but they're also Japanese, so they have a hierarchy. And it's very, it's like being on a giant committee in some ways. So you're trying to help. It's a great organization for doing blood drives and other things that happen in Japan. We worked a lot with the Japanese Red Cross to help with getting blood drives together. We did some programs after the earthquake to help people in the tsunami areas. But also at the same time, you've got meetings every other week, and then other administrative meetings. And in those meetings, you've got a lot of people with different ideas and strong voices and a very Japanese groupthink mentality. And I was in the position, right towards the end of COVID, where I actually became president of my local chapter of the Lions Club. And the local chapter has about 40 members. And I've been told I'm one of only less than 5 non-Asian foreigners to be a president of a Lions Club chapter. And Lions Club has been in Japan for 60 or 70 years or something like that now. But one of the things I found is, being the president, they would say, yeah, we want your ideas, and you would give your ideas, but a lot of pushback on it, because being the owner of my own company, I don't have to worry so much about the tanimaki. which, planting the seeds. I mean, I'm working with the Japanese staff I have tend to like working in a foreign company. Or no, we're a Japanese company officially, but in a company with a more foreign mindset. And the teachers we have, of course, are not Japanese. You go into Lions Club and you realize, whoa, this is what working in a Japanese company is like, I think. That trying to get things done really meant talking to everybody and planting the seeds and just trying to start something new was very, very difficult. If it's something they had done before, no problem, gets approved every year. Oh, we did that last year. We did that last year. We did that last year. But trying to start something new, I vastly underestimated how much work it would be to try to get something new, because I'd been receiving all kinds of support verbally to do something new. You're the first foreign non-Japanese president. Let's do all these new things, but then the new things just wouldn't happen because of all the pushback against it. So it was
Japan does inertia very well.
It does the inertia very well, but it wants to change, and I think that is a true desire, but it doesn't know how to.
Yeah, I think I watched a documentary about the Olympus scandal, and I can't remember the journalist's name, but he said it's typical Japan. So everybody says that things must change, but nothing ever happens.
Well, I don't want to say never have. I've been here 26 years now. There's been change, and where I do want to give Japan credit is when it changes quickly. Almost kind of like the vaccinations after COVID, for example. Everyone's like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to, all these other countries did their vaccination programs months before Japan. But then when Japan started, bam, within 3-4 months, almost everyone was vaccinated. So building up to that change and the amount of planning Japan needs in order to get moving is much more than in the West. Even when we moved into a new location for our kindergarten, we renovated a hard off. Hard off is the very badly named used electronics store. But there was an old hard off building that we did construction on to turn into a kindergarten. And we were the first ever people in Yamagata Prefecture to turn a retail space into a childcare space. My goodness, was it a lot of red tape. It just took a lot. I mean, people were very kind. They were very, very kind about it, but it just doing anything that no one has ever done before is really, really hard in Japan. And kind of by definition, being in rural Japan, being a foreigner, almost everything I do is something no one has done before.
Yeah, and it's I think it's not just in Japan, but if you've ever read about people repurposing buildings in Europe or America because of housing shortages, there's so much difficulty, isn't there, to turn, for example, a residential unit from a commercial unit, or in your case, retail to educational space.
That's true. Reading a lot, reading and hearing on podcasts a lot about the issues with retail, with office building space in, say, New York, and trying to get that repurposed to apartments and so forth. Yeah, that is true. That they're having a lot of trouble with that.
And so I wanted also to mention the ET book service that you're running.
Yes. Thank you. That one is an interesting, again, because I don't have enough projects that I'm working on yet. So today, why not start another project? But no, this is one, the English Teachers Book Service had originally been started by David Paul, and that's been going for a while. But there was another company doing the back end work on that, and was talking with David Paul about the best way to, because he wanted to see the English Teachers Book Service, book service continue in a strong way. And it's unique in that anyone who's a member of ETJ, and ETJ is a free organization to join, automatically gets a 20% discount on the books that they order through the book service. So it's a book service, again, focusing on trying to help, especially smaller schools. Bigger schools, you can get big discounts with other book services. But for smaller schools or independent teachers, again, independent owners and teachers, it's hard to get a discount like that without having a large sales volume. And so we want to be able to do that. And at our kindergarten, the one that has that used to be the old hard off, the downstairs on that is a warehouse where they used to keep their electronics. And so we have essentially free warehousing space that would allow us to take that on. So if you order books through the English Teachers Book Service, the etbookservice.com, then that is helping give, smaller school owners a larger discount on books than they would get otherwise. And then we are actually handling the distribution on that. So that order comes through the site, and we are actually handling it out of Yamagata now and sending those books with our staff. So that's been a fun challenge to take on. We started that last October of 2023.
So you are Jeff Bezos.
Apparently. So should I start? We should start. My education prime. Or I have a feeling that we probably couldn't get the trademark on that though.
Yeah, there's one actually interesting scene in the movie. I didn't know about it. I hadn't known about this previously, but he decided to set up the website, and he wanted to order from the wholesaler. Mm-hmm. So but he didn't know that there was a minimum of maybe 10, I can't remember what it is now, 10 orders on each book, and he couldn't do that. So what he decided to do was order 10 books, or he'd order books that weren't in print, basically, that you couldn't get. So basically he'd order 10 books, but 9 of the books were impossible to get. So
interesting.
Interesting. And one bestseller.
Yeah. And then they would have to ship it to him because they had approved the order, and it was their fault he couldn't get them.
Exactly. So that was a clever move. Yeah. Because that would have crushed his business, wouldn't it? I mean, how could he put up with those costs at the beginning? But there you go. That was a takeaway from that.
Isn't that so much of what business is about, though, is finding yourself, looking at the situation you're in and finding a way to deal with that situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a good book I'm reading. Well, actually, I read all the time. I read a little bit from it. It's called Straight Line Readership. And it's the best book I've ever read about life and business. Okay. Yeah. You can get it on Kindle, just to put help Mr. Bezos out again. But
he needs all the help he can get. So.
Yeah, he does. But he talks in the book, there's many excellent things in the book, but he says that if you want success, that people who are successful, they look at problems as projects. That's an interesting perspective, isn't it? A project or project to be completed rather than a problem to be solved.
And I think looking at school ownership, what I'll often hear, well, during COVID, that was an issue. A lot of people, but also I'll hear, say, some school owners complaining about their staff or complaining about their teachers. And while I can't say that I never complain, obviously that's not true, but really finding that when I change my mindset to, okay, this is a situation we're in, how do we solve it? Because complaining, it it becomes a flywheel. Talking about the business flywheel, complaining becomes a flywheel, so that negativity just turns over in your head, so that you end up not solving the problem, and it doesn't matter how many problems you're having with a staff member, how many problems you're having with a teacher, how many the situation with COVID. We all have agency to do something about it and find a solution. And complaining about things just doesn't work.
Exactly. He talks about that in the book as well. Just dissipates your energy and actually doesn't achieve the objective.
No, it doesn't. And if anything, keeps you from achieving the objective. So, yeah.
Exactly. So on that note, I think, Ryan, thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast. We're going to put a link to all your organizations in the show notes as well, and people can contact you by your email address. And Ryan, thanks again.
Thank you very much, Philip. I've appreciated it.
Thanks for listening to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast with Philip Pound. For more great advice and resources, check out eflmagazine.com. If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.